Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Bravas Luxury Living podcast. In today's edition, we're going to go a slightly different way and talk about a great idea that one of our partners has had, and we'll get to that in a minute. First of all, my pleasure to say hello, Keith. How are you today?
Doing fantastic, Nigel.
Good. And so, Keith, I think this is going to be an interesting add-on to where we were on health and wellness and maybe, life in the time of COVID.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's actually providing an answer instead of just a question about what can we do.
Good. Also with us, we're going to bring back our first ever guest, Sean. Hello, Sean.
Hi, Nigel.
How are you? How's Baltimore today?
It's beautiful today. For November, it's amazing, in fact.
Great. Well, listen, thank you very much for joining us. And finally, to bring us all into the same screen, I'd like to welcome George Walter, President of Rayva. Hey, George.
Good morning, Nigel. How are you?
I'm great. So listen, first of all, our people who watch this podcast have met the other three of us, but you're the new member of the team here on this one. So why don't you tell a bit about us, your background, and how we got to here, or really just your background in the industry?
Yeah, real quickly, I joined the industry. I got into the residential side of our industry about 20 years ago. I launched the group for digital projection, which at the time was just getting into high-end projectors for residential space. And I was there for about 14 years. And then I transitioned to Christie Digital, who is one of the higher-end projector manufacturers and actually was a builder of complete commercial theaters. And they had about a 3-year stint in the industry and then decided that they wanted to go back and focus more on commercial cinema. And the timing for me was almost perfect because one of the industry greats, Theo Kalmarakis, was just launching this new group, Rayva. And he asked me if I would be willing to join with him in the launch. And the idea of Rayva was instead of selling home theaters more traditional way, which was piece by piece as a project, but to kind of pre-configure them. And the idea of pre-configuring was to make it more efficient, easier to install, easier to sell, and just make the load a lot lighter. So I've been with Rayva now for about 4 years, and we've taken the evolution of the theater to media rooms and some other new opportunities, which is what we want to talk about today.
That's great. Before we go there, so typically in your normal business, you're helping people design sort of luxury home theaters that fit their lifestyle. Talk a bit about that.
Yeah, we start out, and when I talk with clients or I'm working with a dealer and we're talking to clients, a lot of it is understanding what's important to them. They want a space where they can enjoy movies or sports with their family, but to really solve their problem, we ask a lot of questions like, what are their favorite movies? Do they like content that's off Netflix or something like that, or is it classic films? So that we can design the aspect ratio and the seating so that it's optimized for what they do. Same way with audio, same way with lighting. And if you get all those components right, we can produce a finished product which excites them. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the product, it's about the experience. It's about using the room, and when you actually enjoy it with your family and you see the smiles and emotion on their face, you did the right thing. And that's really what we focus on. So getting that feedback and then working with our dealer partners and coming up with solutions that are tailored to that customer in a way that they get the most level of enjoyment out of it.
That's great. So also with us, Keith, is Sean. So Sean, you did our first ever podcast, and we talked really about health and wellness. So that was frighteningly 3 or 4 months ago at the start of COVID, and we're still in COVID. What's your sense in the market for where the sort of home automation world has gone in that time? Do you have a sense of any changes?
There's been a lot of changes. I think that we've all experienced a need for flexibility. So we spend a lot more time inside spaces that we didn't spend as much time in before. And dining room tables have become classrooms, and kitchen counters have become home offices. And we have to take a look at how we live in that space and become more comfortable in it. And as it relates to health and wellness, the lighting in that space is incredibly important now, because now we're looking at daytime lighting. A lot of times we weren't in our homes during the daytime. but we have to light them appropriately for daytime use and work and home office use. And then we want to relax at nighttime because we're staying home and not going out to dinner as much and not going out to movies as much, or if at all. So being able to bring that experience into the home requires some flexibility of space. Not everyone has the luxury of having an unfinished basement they could build up after this event, or unused bedrooms or extra spaces that they can turn into offices on a regular basis. So we have to get creative.
Okay, so I think that's the perfect time to bring us all together. So, Sean, did you get this idea from George? George, did you give how did this idea of bringing all of these themes together, where did that come from?
I wish I could take some credit for it, but this was entirely George's idea. I just thought it was a good one and decided to start talking about it some more.
Okay, so George, tell us, what was the idea? What were you thinking?
Well, in my personal life, as well as, having conversations with so many people in the industry and seeing their challenges, of kids being at home and trying to squeeze in different spaces, I looked at what Rayva's core competency was, which was transforming spaces into really exciting rooms. And I started thinking practical, and I said, so many people have an extra bedroom, have an extra space. What if we could make that very practical and use technology, flexible technology, that could evolve throughout the day to be the perfect room for, the mom who's trapped at home away from, her flexibility to hop in the car and do things, and the dad who's working from home, and the kids who are, being schooled at home. And so we started looking at, well, what could we do with a typical fourth bedroom, which may be used as a guest bedroom, which obviously now people aren't having too many guests in. And we started doing a little bit of brainstorming, and we said, well, one of the key facts is that it has to be something that can happen quickly and requires the least amount of distraction from the home, because people don't want a bunch of contractors in their house unless they absolutely have to. So that's where the concept started. And then I just literally started sharing the idea with some other vendors and some other people in the industry, and we kind of got to where we are today.
So, Sean, what did you hear that excited you here?
Well, it goes back to flexibility. So we're taking spaces that we already have. We're taking opportunities that we didn't have before because we didn't necessarily need them, and recreating a space, reinventing an area, or we're giving people more flexibility to use their space in multiple ways. So the room that was the home office and the classroom in the morning could become the meeting room and the theater at night. And to me, that's an enormous advantage in a day like today.
So let's break this down. The idea is that we look for some spare space in the house, isn't it? So what should a homeowner be thinking about here?
Really, it could be. It doesn't necessarily have to be spare space. We're not necessarily starting from scratch. If there's an existing home office, it could convert into this room. If there's an extra guest bedroom, it could convert into this room. If there's an extra room in the basement that was once an exercise room, it could be converted into a space like this. We're just really talking about creating multiple disciplines and some flexibility in a room that already exists and might be used for only a single purpose. It's now being used for multiple purpose.
So can you think of, let's go through some scenarios. So we've got this space, this fourth bedroom, maybe an unfinished basement. What could they be using this virtual room for? Let's talk about some experiences that we think we could create in that space. George, you had quite a good list when you first put this together.
Yeah, we thought of almost like a timeline, and we said, okay, how might a typical day start for a family? And we said, okay, mom likes to do yoga when she starts in the morning. So let's have the room be a yoga room where mom can log in maybe to a central yoga site, or maybe just a friend across town. And on the big screen, it can be just like her friend is in the room with them and they're doing a yoga class together. And then maybe 10 o'clock, dad's got a Zoom call for work. So now the room transitions in to the Zoom room, except for instead of looking at a small 14 or 20 inch screen, he's looking at a 85 or 100 inch screen. And now those faces on that screen are almost lifelike. So now instead of being kind of a semi, abnormal environment, it's almost like those people are actually at the conference room table around him. And one of the key elements is integrating technology. So we have the best in audio, the best in video, and the best in performance of the room. So we're trying to remove any distracting sounds from the rest of the house, as well as keep those sounds that may be going on in the meeting or the exercise class or whatever inside the room. So the room really becomes an environment in its own. And that becomes a special element in being able to transition to different things.
I do really like the idea that you're taking this probably underutilized space, and instead of remodeling your house and adding 1,500 square feet over the course of 9 months, you've kind of turned this one space into something that meets a lot of your needs.
Yeah, and so we could do yoga, you can do schooling, you can do conference calls. Let's walk through some of the technologies, I think, that this room's got to have to be effective. You talked about some of them, but just sort of help everybody understand what the scope of this should be.
Well, there's many layers to this. So there's the technology involved for watching a movie or a film in the room, which is essentially a basic audio and video system. But when you bring Zoom into the conversation, it adds a whole layer of complexity to it, where there needs to be a microphone that's capable of picking up the voice of the presenter or the speaker without feeding back into the system. There has to be a video display that's capable of high resolutions and being able to display the user as well as the people they're interacting with on the Zoom call. There needs to be a well-placed and well-designed video camera, web camera, to allow that person to be seen. And there's some advancements in webcams that allow if there's multiple speakers in the room to focus on the person who's actually speaking instead of focusing on the room as a whole. Lots of layers to this, and the furnishings as well. So being able to be flexible with the way the room is furnished, whether you're sitting at a desk or riding your Peloton or sitting on a beanbag chair watching a movie at night, it needs to be moved around and rearranged to fit that application, but the technology needs to disappear. That at the press of a button, you can switch between movie mode and Zoom mode and exercise room mode, and really at the same time segment yourself or separate yourself from the rest of the home. When we talked about wellness, the acoustical treatments in the room add a whole new layer of importance to it, because now you're not distracting the rest of the family. We're not being distracted by the rest of the family when you're on an important Zoom call or at a meeting.
How important is the lighting? I want to dig into a couple of those. We talk a lot about human-centric lighting, and I know one of the problems that I'm having working at home so much is just the light in the room goes up and down, and sometimes if you're in a basement it's dark. How important do you think to the experience is lighting?
I think it's one of the most important things, frankly. I've noticed myself in the last couple of weeks since daylight savings time ended, sunsets at 5:30 or 5 o'clock maybe. And the darkness makes it feel like it's midnight. The motivation to work starts to diminish greatly when the sun starts to set and that daylight leaves and the melatonin in your system starts to kick in. So having the ability to light the space to keep that energy going while you need that extra hour of work at the end of the day, or if it's an exercise space where you don't want to be sleepy while you're hopping on the exercise bike, that's critically important to the success of the room and to the health and wellness of the users.
And we've talked in this podcast before about speaker manufacturing with speaker suppliers and some of our partners and speakers. But George, a large part of what Rayva brings is sort of soundproofing and acoustic treatments, isn't it? Talk a bit about how that changes the room.
Yeah, I've had this conversation actually over several years with a variety of different people in the industry. And one of the things about acoustics is every room has acoustical challenges. And when those are treated, it just changes the environment. And if you meet with people or talk to people who are used to going into acoustically treated rooms, they always say the same thing. As soon as I go in and close the door, it just feels different. And that is, it feels like the rest of the world goes away. I can have a conversation without kind of hearing this subtle echo, or I can listen to a concert or watch a movie and the sound seems to be coming from the screen, not gently reflecting off the walls. It just feels different. And once you've experienced that, it makes a difference. People say, wow, I'm doing more and more in that room that's acoustically treated than I used to in the family room or somewhere else, just because it feels better. And then the opposite side of that is the rest of the house. We talked about the challenge that we all faced with the pandemic. And if dad's in a room and the kids are in the other room and they're doing a classroom, it's a distraction, right? And when there's an important event, whether it's a Zoom call or you really want the kids to focus on school, to be able for them to go into a room and not hear that other distraction is a big difference. And it is a big deal.
Yeah, I can personally verify that. I've acoustically treated my office and our theater, and those are probably my two favorite places to spend time, just because they're the rooms that are the most relaxing to me. There's not a lot of extra noise and echo and the stuff that we just kind of assume is a part of our environment that doesn't really have to be. And I imagine, especially with kids and doing homework and remote learning, anything you can do to reduce their distractions and allow them to stay focused longer is going to pay huge dividends. The fact that you can then use that room the rest of the day for whatever your needs are, I think is really fantastic. That's exciting.
And the key element for us has always been flexibility.
Which means, a bit of furniture and you've got a completely different space, I guess.
Yeah. And I think it's impressive because it's not flexible in the sense that it's jack of all trades, master of none. Like, it does seem like you kind of have a selection of products that when you put them together in the right way, it's now the best room in your house for watching TV. It's the best room in your house for having a teleconference. It's the best room in your house for the kids to do homework. The best room in your house to do wellness and yoga, or whatever it is. It's the best room in your house if you just want to get away in the morning before the kids get up to read a book. Like, whatever it is, it can easily become all of those spaces at the same time.
Now, if someone's sitting here thinking, oh, the last thing I want over holidays or in the new year is a bunch of builders coming in and the rubble and talk a bit about, as a team, let's think about how easy is this rather than how difficult could this be?
Well, to be honest, that was a big part of when we talked about the concept. Our product is designed to mount on the surface of the wall without having you to go in and do a lot of cutting and changing, and that's the messy part. And even when we look at the electronics, our approach is to mount everything on the surface and then kind of visualize a skin that covers it up, a very attractive skin with integrated lighting that just finishes it, hides all the electronics, hides all the things that you don't want to see. But the beauty of it is that it can be undone just as quickly and easily as it was done. So our target was to be able to convert this room from its current state to this brand new version in less than a week.
I also think that one of the reasons I have terribly named this the holo-deck, which is, a concept from Star Trek and the Next Generation, is because, my concept of the holo-deck was whenever in Star Trek they wanted to, go somewhere but couldn't really explain why they'd suddenly turned up in an old west town, they had this very useful vehicle of, we'll go to the holodeck and press a couple of buttons and we'll simulate that world. And while we're not offering three-dimensional holograms that you can interact with and shoot and do all the other things they might have done on Star Trek, we are really allowing people to imagine rooms in a very different way, aren't we, Sean? This really is the first of the tele-presence that might work in a house.
It is. It's a pretty remarkable concept when you really think about it, that you can take a space that was intended to be one thing and turn it into not just one, but several different other things. Having the option of using it for school and work and play, as well as a wellness area, without building an addition on your home is really appealing to me, and I imagine to a lot of people it would be.
So if I'm a DIYer at home, so if I'm, I've installed my Alexa and I've got some Philips Hue lights and, I can rig a camera. Why is this different? What makes this so fundamentally different from something, I could do on a Sunday afternoon if I had all the technology. Does anyone have a sense?
Yeah. I think there's a level of integration that's different there too, to start with. A single button to transform the space, to transform that lighting, to transform if there's a motorized shade on the window to darken the space, to bring up the Zoom cameras and microphones versus just the TV and the AV equipment and the source gear. The professional calibrations that we do to make the room sound like it should, the professional design of the acoustical treatments that George and his team would do to make sure that the room is acoustically ideal for the environment. All these elements come together, and sure, you could purchase every one of them individually, but it's the integration of all those things that makes it so special.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is it has to go away, right? I mean, if you imagine this room, and my vision was always that it has to feel like a room, not like a place with a bunch of electronics in it. So the electronics have to be properly installed and calibrated, but then they have to disappear. And when they disappear, now it becomes a functional room for the family to enjoy. And it can't be complicated to operate. It has to be simple, one touch, two touch, and it's doing the thing that you intended it to do.
Yeah, I think that's a key. I think the ease of use, but then just the experience it provides. I mean, a lot of movies were getting released in the theater and at home simultaneously. And yeah, you could watch it on your laptop or you could watch it in a theater. And you're going to see the movie either way, but you're not going to get the same experience. And while those do-it-yourself solutions absolutely work, and some of them are brilliant. I mean, some of them are things we wish our industry had come up with. In the end, they rarely ever really play well together and create an experience. It's just more stuff to have, more stuff to learn, more stuff to deal with.
So I guess that means we need a home automation platform here. So typically we do Elan or Control4 or Savant or Elan or one of those. I'm guessing either they need to have one of these or we need to get them one of these. Is that right?
It could be a standalone or single room solution. So if they have one, we could expand on it. If they're using one of those platforms inside the house, we could certainly add this room to that control platform. If they just want a standalone room, they can buy a small version of any one of those and make that work. But that's a critical element of the success of this room as a whole.
And George, when you're building your home theaters, you have you always think about that from the same point of view, don't you? The need for this sort of one-button automation.
Yeah, I mean, the key for me, when we started the company and we said, okay, what were some of the biggest frustrations that clients had on a home theater? The number one frustration was it's hard to operate. And so our target has always been keep it simple. Allow them to go in and press one or two buttons and the movie's playing because it's about the experience. They don't want to have to deal with electronics. They want to have a great experience.
Yeah, as we were talking about the automation system, not to get too specific on like one company, but I was thinking of just the beauty of having like Savant where you can create your own scene. We could set it up where you have your morning yoga mode, a teleconference mode, a movie mode. But then as the family starts to use that space, they realize, man, we love going in here and reading books at night to our kids with the lights dim and really warm. So it helps them get restful. And, it's neat that they could just go in, set it up the way they like it, press one button and save that. And now they've made that space even more useful without inviting us back or having another contractor come in or, like Sean said, having an addition put on the house just to meet this one need. It just kind of allows it to adapt. And again, I don't think the do-it-yourself solution could really do that in the same way as one of these more powerful automation systems that feels complicated when you talk about it, but when you live with it, just makes your life so much easier.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that we haven't touched on enough, and maybe we touched on it briefly, is the way the room looks. One of the things about Rayva that I find so amazing is the rooms that they design are beautiful. They're spectacular. And this is not a do-it-yourself project. Most people aren't going to go in and mount panels on their walls and design them from scratch. So the end product, with the renderings they can generate, you can see what the room's going to look like before you build it. And it really is a unique-looking space, and you can modify colors and shapes and sizes. But it's a special space when they're finished with it.
Yeah, Nigel, you had mentioned earlier about the impact of lighting. And as LED lighting has become more and more popular, I think everybody is starting to really appreciate how you can transform an entire room just by varying the lighting. And when you talk about a centralized control system, which allows you, as Keith had said, to have a scene which ties not just the electronics to a certain mode, but now, brings the lighting specifically to that mode as well. And sometimes it's about creating a mood. Sometimes it's about creating the time of day with circadian lighting. And sometimes it's about creating excitement. If we're going to watch a football game on Sunday afternoon, why not let the lights reflect the team colors? So when everybody goes in there, as soon as they step in the room, they're in the mood to watch a football game. And all of that can so easily be done if the control system is properly integrated.
So let's say we've got somebody excited by this concept here. Sean, they want their own holo-deck in their spare bedroom or in their basement. What should the first steps be?
Well, the first step, of course, is to contact Bravas, right, Nigel?
Absolutely.
But give us a call. If this is a space that's of interest to you, we have some pre-engineered solutions that we've built for this that fit, I'd say, the majority of the applications, and we can customize those for any user depending on their needs and the size and shape of the room that we're putting this into. But we'd be happy to show some renderings and give them an idea what it would look like. Maybe give us a small example of what the interface would look like and how they interact with that space. And then have a real conversation about the needs and the uses for that space and make sure that we cover all those bases.
That's great. Well, listen, I think we're going to produce more marketing materials and have more ways to discuss this with clients. So I think this is an exciting opportunity, and we look forward to knowing more. But before we let you go, George, we play this little game with everybody we get on the podcast. Sean has already done this once, but he's allowed to revise his answers if he's had better ones and he's had time to think about it. And we sort of play the 3-question game. So the first question, George, for you is, what's the home automation piece of technology you think you couldn't live without? Is there something you use daily, you go, crumbs, without that my life would be awful?
Well, for me, I'm doing more and more with voice activated control. Whether it's, for me today, it's Alexa, but certainly I see more and more companies entering into that, and that being a mechanism that ties so much of my automation into one easy to use piece.
Okay, and is there a second question? Is there a job you've done, maybe a Rayva home theater or something you've done that when you look back on it, you go, wow, that was just like the best example of what we do?
Yeah, we did it was a historic house, and there were a lot of challenges so that we could change some things inside the house, but we couldn't change anything outside. And it was a room over the garage, so it had windows and some things that under normal circumstances you would have just changed, but because of the fact that the home was classified as historic, we could not. And it was absolutely wonderful when the client opened the door, and what used to be a couple of spare bedrooms now was transformed into this incredible theater, and his jaw just dropped and he said, wow. And for me, it's all about that end user excitement when they see the room and they use the room. And again, that one, because on the outside, it looked like something completely different than what was on the inside.
Okay, and last and finally, if there's a piece of technology or a gadget that's never been designed or doesn't exist today that would make your life easier, do you know what that is? What's the one problem we haven't solved yet?
A mood detector.
Oh, that's Keith. We have our new business idea.
I don't think I'm going to be responsible for that one because I definitely am not good at that.
I think for all of us, who spend a lot of time, meeting with clients and meeting with people within the company, if you walk into a room and you could immediately detect what kind of mood everybody's in and you knew how to prepare, that would be incredible.
I'm willing to bet Sean still has a mood ring, don't you, Sean, from the...
I knew that was going to come up, Nigel. I knew you were going to say that.
Well, listen, George, thank you very much. Sean, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, for joining. We'd love to come and talk to you about our holo-deck, our experience of turning that spare space into a real virtual presence area. George, Sean, Keith, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, guys.